heartbreaking moments, especially, well, the most recent one being at the World Championships in 2017, where I got to top 8 and I lost to Diego, who was playing basically the exact same deck, right?
Yes.
So I lost the mirror match and my opponent went on to win World. So maybe in a parallel universe, I'm the world champion.
Well, we'll have to see if that eventually crosses over. But for now, we are blessed with 2 amazing players, starting off with at least one amazing card. This amazing rare Yveltal up against Radiant Charizard.
Yeah, we have a Lugia mirror match, and right off the bat, Xander did win the coin flip, so that's a big advantage to have. And as we were discussing, counts and corners you could possibly cut in order to gain those extra super valuable deck spaces, as Xander is playing 3 Lugia, not 4, and 3 Arceus, so really, really being risky in that regard.
Well, do you know what that opens up the door for? Because I'm looking at it. There's a Raikou in this list, and that could be pretty nice if we did not see a way to slow down the weakness. But we do see that Henry is playing that Dunsparce. Just another card that Henry would have to find, and that just adds to the list of what these decks need in the opening 2 turns.
Indeed, it's very interesting that Xander also chose not to play the Dunsparce. He is taking that risk, but Henry is not playing the Raikou, so he's not super, like, Xander won't necessarily know, but if he gets the information that Henry isn't playing Raikou, he's going to feel much more comfortable having a Lugia in the active spot.
Well, it looks like Xander has accomplished what he needed to. The Archeops into the discard pile. The Lugia is on the bench and an energy down for potential retreating in the future.
Yeah, you really couldn't have asked for much more from Xander's side. If he has a supporter follow-up for what he did on turn 1, then he's sitting very pretty. And from Henry's side, we do see the best possible scenario. Ultra Balling away 2 Arceus always feels fantastic when you're playing Lugia.
I think that's the equivalent of the Professor Juniper high five, is the new Ultra Ball double Archeops. If you get that off, just congratulations.
Yeah, and I think that's the benefit of playing 4 Archeops in your deck. That really shows, like, it increases the chances of you being able to have those cards without needing to search for them, as we saw Xander use the instance. So it saves those resources for other things, like increasing your chance of finding a Lugia V-Star on turn 2. So it's going to be, I'm really excited that we're going to see a full-fledged, played-out mirror match, and where both players are playing interesting techs as well.
Yeah, this is perfect. Henry now with the capture energy as well. Just going to get one of those energies onto the Lugia V and start to build onto this board. And I'm curious to see if Henry has any information leaning towards that Raikou. Not just yet focused on the opening search here and the consistency with the Oranguru.
Yeah, one big difference from the Players' Cups, for example, is players don't have deck list information. Like, we all rely on basically hearsay or having someone having played against the player that you're up against and maybe giving you a bit of information. So it's going to be not easy to determine the exact counts, even though you can make educated guesses.
Well, that is going to be it for Henry this turn. Just has the energy and passes along. Xander going to start things off with the very first card as a Marnie. Maybe not exactly how you want to start things off, but this hand looks decent. We do see the Lugia V-Star coming down to play, and there are multiple Archeops. So sure enough, exactly what you need off that summoning star, and Archeops is ready to go.
Yeah, now Xander would love to be taking 2 prize cards with this Yveltal, and investing 5 energies total to knock out a single prizer could be a little tough on Xander's resources, but he'll have that initiative. And Xander also has the benefit that he only has 1 rule box Pokemon in play, and that does mean that as long as he's able to maintain that 1 Lugia and use the other Pokemon to attack Henry, then he'll always have that advantage because Henry does have 2 Lugias in play already.
Yeah, we'll see where Xander decides to place these energies from the Primal Turbo right now. Certainly a little bit of a debate and how you want to go about this. Maybe not the ideal Pokemon to be attacking into this Radiant Charizard, but at least you're removing a somewhat threat. You, of course, would prefer to have 2 prize cards.
Yeah, of course. Now we are seeing Xander power up the Lugia with that V-Guard energy. The V-Guard energy will make it so that Henry will not have an easy time knocking out that Lugia, right? They will require 3 powerful energies and a choice build. 4 powerful energies will not be enough. They would be 10 short. And you don't expect Henry or Xander to be playing Sinnoh, Temple of Sinnoh or something like that, which would actively hinder themselves. So we'll have to see how Henry responds to this and if he has the resources to do this, because Marnie just got played and we all know how difficult it can be to sometimes recover from Marnie. It's definitely not my favorite card.
Yeah, even speaking of recovery, we do see the gift energy, it looks like, on the Lugia. So going to have an opportunity here, even if there was a retaliation from Henry finding the knockout, going to be able to maybe get some cards back and make something happen.
Yeah, I really like that gift energy. It really sets you up for, well, I mean, sure, you're going to take 2 prize cards, but I'll have a full hand to make sure that I can respond to whatever you do, right? So, and that gift energy is definitely not something that we've seen in a lot of decks.
Yeah, we've seen maybe it just focused on Reggie Gigas as a way to include. But yeah, sure enough, Xander finding a nice way to include this very impactful special energy card, taking the knockout here on the Radiant Charizard. And yeah, he also snuck a Raikou in as the very last card played that turn. We'll see if Henry noticed.
Yeah, very, very sneaky from Xander right there. I do feel like, or something that I personally tried to do is like out of sight, out of mind, right? So it's interesting that Xander did bench that. I guess if you're expecting a Marnie, then it's worth it because then you no longer have to search for it. But that does give the prompt for Henry to search for his 2 counters, which are Dunsparce and Manaphy, which in turn will give Xander the confirmation rather, that Henry is playing them.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. There certainly is debate to that. Where do you give Henry that information? Is it worth it because you just don't want to retreat next turn in a situation where this Lugia V-Star were to be knocked out? And I don't know if that really outweighs the benefit that Henry gets right now with all this valuable information.
Exactly, and now we are going to see Henry go ahead and, well, he's eyeing up the Dunsparce, right, which I do think is very important. However, he's shuffling. He chose to fail that capture, which is very, very surprising. I fully expected that Dunsparce to get benched, but Henry has something else in mind.
Yeah, we'll see what the strategy is. Maybe just not terribly worried about the damage output from the Raikou. I think we saw a choice build fall, but
Henry decides to concede. He realizes he's too far behind. Didn't even try to read the wind. He was going to be 3 prizes behind in the mirror match with your opponent's full setup. It was going to be a very difficult time.
Well, we said there would be some fireworks, and how about a 7-minute Lugia mirror match? That is definitely one way to start round number 4, and I do like that Henry understands that, like, this wasn't going to be going his way. The hand size kind of fell by the wayside. That gift energy is pretty much the writing on the wall. Even if you do get through this huge Pokemon here in that Lugia, you're just going to be dealing with a lot more resources.
Yeah, if your opponent sets up perfectly and you're going setup and you're going second, you need to at least match their perfect setup. If you fail to do that, then you're going to be far behind, and Henry recognizes it with all the experience that he has, and he knows that it's more important to have enough time to win a full game 2 and potentially a full game 3 rather than waste time in a game that he has very little chance, if 0 chance, at making a comeback.
Right. This is not a mirror match with Palkia where these players are working towards an end game where you can potentially close them out with a Roxanne. Everything's on the board. You can look and say, oh, well, they're just going to knock me out next turn. Yeah, let's just not waste any time.
Exactly. Now, like, Xander bricked Henry off of the Marnie, right? Marnie did his party trick. However, Henry doesn't have any way to really do that against him. As you mentioned, Roxanne limits the amount of cards in hand, but that doesn't matter when Arceus is just powering up whatever you need.
Yeah, I don't want to go to any Marnie parties anytime soon. That is definitely a scary place to be, as Henry sees himself down 0-1 right now and is going to try to make use of this opening turn, as we do know how important this advantage is. Sure enough, Arceus to the discard pile.
Yeah, and the Lugia hit in play. So now the pressure is on Xander to get 2 Lugias down, because now Henry is the one threatening to KO that Lugia, especially in the active spot, so he won't require a boss or a Serena to potentially knock it out. So Henry must be feeling really good in this situation, having just lost that heartbreaking game off of the Marnie.
We do see a similar strategy to what Xander was able to pull off, just to get the energy in place to retreat, have a Lugia, and at least you have 1 Archeops. That's not bad.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely play with 1 Archeops, as we saw in round 1. It's definitely sometimes good enough to win you those matches, but of course you want that second. And Xander, getting the capture energy on turn 1, will be able to bench a second Lugia if he wishes, in order to protect that active one, or at least guarantee that the Summoning Star will be happening the turn after.
Yeah, and I think that's all you can really ask for at this point. Just make sure that it happens, and you'll be able to continue to stay in this game. There are always avenues by way of the prize cards or just awkward cards in the hand. We saw that Marnie party able to handle what Henry was able to do. So if you can lock that out, you definitely have opportunities. We just saw that if you get stuck with the bad hand, it's a little more tricky.
Yeah, so this is where Xander, if he's expecting Henry to get that incredible setup, then he'll have to, at the very least, match it, and then hope his management of resources and his access to different tech cards will be able to compensate for the advantage that Henry will have after he gets it up. And I think Henry's hand is good enough to where it's going to be a pretty even matchup here.
We do see the Ultra Ball going to target that Archeops, get that into the discard pile. Going to lose the Gift Energy this time around, but you have to be thinking if Gift Energy is a card that's going to fall, that maybe the rest of the hand's pretty good.
Yeah, and I really like this benching Raikou from Xander, because it can't be targeted by Serena, which is like right now competing for deck space with Boss's Order, so it's not easy to just knock it out. Xander might know that Henry isn't playing Raikou as well, so he knows it's safe on the bench. And this is a way where if Henry's able to get a KO on the Lugia, Xander is also forcing Henry to find a Dunsparce and a Manaphy to not lose the advantage that he currently has. So I really like that play from Xander, just getting that resources out to make sure that he can punish any sort of less than optimal play from Henry next turn.
Absolutely. It's just 1 card, and it leads to Henry scrambling to find multiple cards. And the more that you ask of your opponent, the harder it is for them to continue to promote threats and stay with the advantage in this game.
Exactly. So now next turn, not only does Henry need another Archeops in the discard pile and the Lugia V-Star, he also requires a Dunsparce and a Manaphy to really weather the Raikou. At the very least, the Dunsparce, right? But then it would probably get taken out, so you really need both.
Well, we did see Read the Wind as the attack for the turn, going to lose that Boss's Orders and draw 3 cards. I don't know if it's exactly like Rule the Region. I'm worried because it's very similar as just an attack you don't always want to do, but let's make sure we keep an eye on that win rate.
Now, we do see Henry lead with a capture energy, and this is where, if you're Xander, you're thinking, okay, if Raikou comes out, I'm in so much trouble. However, Xander didn't see Raikou the previous turn, and he's not going to see Raikou now. So if he didn't know before, he basically has all the confirmation he wants that Henry chose not to play the Raikou. It could be priced, there's always a chance for that, and it has to be in the back of your mind, but I think you're feeling pretty happy to not see a Raikou down here.
I think this was really smart by Henry last game, identifying on the quick ball, I don't want to grab the Dunsparce because I don't want to give this information away right now. I just want to concede. And sure enough, you see the Raikou come down, and then you play the Dunsparce. And Xander's, he plays that.
Yeah, and that's why Xander might have been confidently benching the Raikou, but it ended up not happening. And we do see a Collapse Stadium get played, which I really like, because now, even if Xander gets the Summoning Star off, he can only get 1 Archeops into play unless he finds a counter Stadium.
Yeah, and that's really strong. If you're not expecting to take a knockout on this turn, you can put your opponent in a situation where they have to maybe play a little slower too, or if they're only going to grab 1 Archeops, they're hindering themselves for the rest of the game.
Yeah, now unfortunately it seems like Henry whiffed that second Archeops, so now he has to make that tough decision. Does he only summoning star 1 or does he wait? But then with that waiting, he's also giving up on the advantage that we've mentioned. So this is a tough decision for Henry to make. However, I think he really needs to get that aggression going for him.
Yeah, we are going to see that quick ball played. It would have loved to discard an Archeops instead, going to throw away one of the many energies that Archeops can search out. Lugia V coming down onto the board, and Henry's going to play it a little slow.
Oh, choosing not to summoning star. Okay, really valuing that second Archeops. And now we'll see what Xander has in store for us. We'll see both players played Marnie in back-to-back turns, so we'll have to see if Marnie ends up doing its party trick once again, or if we'll be able to see more fluidity from either player.
Well, if the hand we saw was Xander's, I believe we saw Lost Vacuum, so certainly could see fireworks this time around. Just depends on if this is the Pokemon you want to attack into. We did see the boss's orders discarded, so that does feel a little weird, but here comes the Lost Vacuum.
Yeah, now Xander definitely in. If he can pull off the Lugia, get the Archeopses, then he's going to be in a really, really good spot thanks to that Raikou. He would eliminate the Oranguru, he would eliminate the Dunsparce, and take 2 prizes, and then that means he needs 2 more knockouts on Lugias to win.
Wow, here we see the Serena, and it is going to draw some cards. Xander really focused on the setup right now.
Yeah, it seems both players are struggling to really get their full setup, right? Their ideal setup, and it could be because they're not playing those 4-off counts of the Archeops.
To see that heat fire energy coming down onto the Yveltal. And once again, just going to draw some additional cards with that Lugia V. And if doing it once felt weird, twice can't be much better. But at least you have some cards in the hand.
Yeah, the tempo of this game is completely different than the previous one. We're seeing both players take their time, not draw super well, and not being able to get that Archeops at all, really.
Well, we see the Professor's research coming down now. Henry drawing a large hand of 7. I think we do see the Archeops in there. Is there a way to discard that Pokemon?
He does have Aurora Energy, but he already attached this turn, so I don't think he has a way to discard it.
We see Evolution Incense just not finding the right items at the right time.
Yeah, Henry definitely finally decides it's time, and this is where I would say, like, why not do it the previous turn, right? Like, what he was really hoping for that second Archeops. Unfortunately, he didn't get there, but you can't lose any more time at this rate. You have to play with an Archeops. That is information that both players will have, and we'll see how Xander adapts to that.
Yeah, is the 1 additional energy on the Lugia V that impactful to where this becomes the optimal turn to start getting aggressive, or is this just a circumstance where you just have to start playing Pokemon? And sure enough, Henry going to get aggressive now. Lugia V-Star taking the knockout on that Lugia V, and 2 prize cards into the hand for Henry.
Yeah, I thought for a second, like, maybe the second double turbo was prized for Henry, and that's why 1 Archeops would not have led him to attack. But no, it's right there. So finally takes those 2 prize cards, knocks out the Lugia, and it's on Xander to really respond to this. Will he be able to? That is the question.
Well, it looks like if the response were to come, it's going to be that amazing destruction from Yveltal. Xander still looking, does find that Lugia V-Star, and has, of course, the V-Star ability right now to summon some of those Archeops, and sure enough, another hitting the discard pile.
Yeah, Xander getting the right combination of cards to get that second Archeops in the discard pile. So even though Xander doesn't have the prize initiative, he does have the advantage of the double Archeops as opposed to Henry's single. So that should make a difference as the game goes on and resources start to thin out, and Henry needs to use some of his single prize attackers. Yveltal feels pretty off the table for Henry, whereas Xander can confidently use it this very turn.
Yeah, we're going to see this single prize Pokemon taking a huge knockout here on the Lugia V-Star, and that leads to a lot of awkward decisions for Henry. Do you ever ignore this Pokemon that just takes knockouts on everything? You can't. So you're going to have to play into this odd prize exchange, and that just means that Xander did buy that extra turn he needed.
Yeah, and something very interesting was Xander discarded the Manaphy from the attachment of the Aurora and then used Research. So he's very confident that he doesn't have to worry about Raikou at this point.
Yep, maybe playing with some additional information. It's always impossible for us to tell who actually knows what's going on in the other player's deck, but maybe you start to get an understanding when you're looking at the types of special energies that are chosen. It is hard to read like that, though, when you're only 20 minutes into the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And game one was so short, right? Like even the Dunsparce wasn't shown by Henry, so definitely impossible to play with perfect information. You can make some educated guesses. And I think both Henry and Xander are now very confident in the information that they have.
That was terrifying. I saw the hand extension, but he's asking for the discard pile. And surely enough, we will see more Pokemon.
Yeah.
Henry has plenty of cards in the hand, and I definitely expect to see something happen here. We have that Radiant Charizard as a potential attacker, maybe a little too early. We'll just have to see what this Archeops really is able to help out with here.
Now we're going to see now more Archeopsis finally hit the discard pile. Unfortunately, there's no more V-Star for Henry, so won't be able to take advantage of those. But deck thinning is very important. It increases your chance of drawing the right cards at the right time. So it's all about maximizing your chances of keeping up this advantage that Henry currently has, but that having one Archeops makes it a little harder to continue.
We will see the Capture Energy as the attachment, just trying to make the most use of these energies that are in the hand. So many were in the hand there for Henry, and now we also see that Marnie is going to come down just to get those cards back into the deck and maybe find a couple extra additional resources to help out here.
Yeah, we're going to see the Marnie trick. Now Henry's hoping that Marnie will do its party trick and break Xander perhaps a little bit, but the beauty, as we've mentioned, of Archeops is that even if Xander were to draw a less than ideal hand, with what he has in play, he definitely has a response to his Lugia.
Yeah, looking at the other side, we already see the powerful energy and the choice belt down, and that's when you start to realize just the sheer strength of this Lugia deck, where it can get plenty of additional damage well past that 220 base mark.
Yeah, 220 is the base mark, but the powerful energy is adding up so much, and with that choice belt already down, even if Henry was to grab a V-Guard energy, which we are seeing he's choosing not to grab those powerfuls, he knows that Lugia is pretty much gone. So
yeah, that's very understandable here. You can kind of see the strategy lining up for Henry now. Just going to have to use this Lugia to clean up, and maybe Radiant Charizard will be the Pokemon to clean the rest of the prize cards up for Henry, as awkwardly sitting at 3 now, and we're going to probably see this Lugia fall soon.
Yeah, and that will put Xander at 2 prize cards. However, there's no more 2 prizers by Henry, right? So Henry still has that advantage. In order for Xander to win, he needs to attack at least 3 more times. And Henry, if he manages to knock out the active Lugia V-Star, then he can win in 2 attacks. And I think both players have that in mind and need to find a way to prevent their opponent from taking a prize card. The V-Guard energy on Lugia V-Star, of course, it could be very useful, but with Henry now focusing only on single prize attackers, then that V-Guard is basically just a colorless.
Yeah, and that's when we start to see some of those additional cards like the Choice Belt being very impactful, just trying to get the additional damage you need to take knockouts. But very wisely, we see Xander right now focused on the single prize Pokemon after eventually these 2 Lugias will fall. And that's going to be the big struggle. Is Xander going to have enough on the back end to keep up with Henry? Is Henry going to find an additional Pokemon past this Radiant Charizard? Or are we going to have to see it used again? How does Henry keep up here after losing this big Pokemon and only having 1 Archeops?
Yeah, it has to be this Radiant Charizard. He needs to find a choice build, and then getting that last prize card could be a little difficult if Xander chooses to use another Lugia to take a KO. Then Henry cannot power up Yveltal. He will have already used Charizard and does not have a Lugia in play, so it could be a little difficult for Henry to close out this game, and this is where he would love to have access to Raikou.
Yeah, we see just the Lugia right now as some discard fodder for this quick ball, and will Henry find an additional Pokemon to potentially play onto the board? you know you don't want to exactly play those Vs down right now, but maybe the resource count tells you otherwise. We did see Xander lose a lot of resources early on, discarding the boss's orders and using the Serena for drawing. So maybe that could be something that plays a role here. But certainly the biggest play here is that Radiant Charizard has the Aurora Energy and the Choice Belt. That's definitely the #1 piece.
Yeah, now Henry very smartly preparing that Arceus to promote and then be able to retreat into the Lugia, which I imagine is his follow-up. Henry's down to 1 prize card, and Lugia V-Star is his best attacker. It'll be interesting to see if Henry has access to an extra double turbo to attack with it, or how he plans on dealing with Xander's next threat, which I have to imagine has to be a Lugia. Anything else is too weak and would fall down to just a single Arceus.
Yeah, are we going to see some Speed Wing to close this out? It's not exactly how you imagined this going, but it can deal some damage.
Yeah, it does 120, and the powerful energies, of course, help Arceus deal extra damage. So if Henry has access to 2 more energies, one of them being powerful, he can take down his opponent's Arceus. So we'll have to see what Xander has in store. How does he prevent Henry from taking this last prize card?
Yeah, Xander is checking the discard pile, trying to manage these resources as best as possible. Maybe trying to find an avenue where this Raikou would be able to cash in on a double knockout. I'm not sure if we see that just yet, but Luminion is certainly going to look for a supporter to assist.
Ooh, there's the power-up of the Arceus. However, that is not enough to knock out the Charizard. Xander could be preparing for, like, ping the Charizard with Arceus, and since Charizard cannot attack this upcoming turn, since it did just attack, and with only 1 Arceus, retreating that Charizard is going to be very difficult, then that could allow Xander to get a double prize card next turn.
That is a very strong play here, and we are going to see that Marnie coming down, so potentially some further disruption here as things really get down to the wire here in game #2.
Now, does Henry still have access to that Manaphy? I honestly don't recall if it's already been discarded or if he still has access to it. If he doesn't have it, then it comes down to Xander having the 2 Auroras.
Well, Speed Wing is the attack. Radiant Charizard currently stuck in the active without an attack to use.
Yeah, that 3 retreat cost from Charizard could be its own demise right here.
It's like just the single energy coverage of that capture energy. What else is left in the deck? So many resources have been used to get to this point. Manaphy is down, so that will protect a very strong counterplay from Xander.
Yeah, that's really... Henry really delayed that Manaphy, and it was also very risky, right? If Henry hadn't drawn a way to find it off of his Marnie hand, then he would have lost to that Raikou. So risky play, maybe holding on to that information to make Xander overcommit. There were instances where Xander could have used the Raikou and also chose not to. So pretty interesting, the mind games that happen within the game as well, and the information game.
Absolutely, and that could be the difference here in game #2. Henry going to just pass the turnover, but has to feel fairly confident knowing that just 1 more prize card will be able to seal this up.
Yeah, absolutely. Henry has 2 attackers powered up that can 1-hit KO everything other than the Luminion. But if the Luminion is the Pokemon that is in the active spot, then that means it didn't attack. And that means Charizard can just attack again. So I don't see how Xander could possibly take this, and there we have it. Yeah, the concession from Xander realizing he's out of options. Henry has game in play, so even if we saw a Roxanne, then there was nothing for Xander left to do at that point.
Yep, Xander noticing what we're seeing up here, and that means we are going to be moving on to game #3. And I'm very excited that we're going to have this opportunity. You get worried when you have a 7-minute opening game, but both players slowing down the pace and really showing off some very incredible play, just finding the right opportunities to play down these tech cards, and Henry waiting until the very last second to reveal that Manaphy, ends up working to perfection as Xander just really had no other plays left.
Absolutely, that was a very, I wouldn't say entertaining game. Like both players have different strategies at their disposals. Both of their techs sort of counteract each other, and it really came down to the wire and that hidden information of Manaphy. Now, Xander does go into the game with basically all the information that he could possibly want, other than, I guess, the confirmation of, does Henry really not play the Raikou? And if he sees Dunsparce and he sees Manaphy, then the space has to come somewhere, right?
Right. Well, maybe we'll see the limited placements, at least in the deck, for these additional cards like the Archeops and the Lugia start to have an impact here. Of course, you start to wonder if that's ever going to happen when you do make those decisions. And this opening hand for Xander has to be the most important of the tournament so far.
Ooh, we do see the Dunsparce prized by Henry, so that is something that Xander could really take advantage of. That makes the Raikou very, very menacing, and we also saw it at the very top of the prize card, so that could really factor into this game. That silly Dunsparce just being there could actually be game determining.
Yeah, we're so used to the fighting coverage on the Arceus, but instead it's trying to help out this Lugia right now, and Henry has run out of friends. It is sitting at the very tippy top and won't be seen unless Henry's already winning.
Now we are seeing the sort of the same dynamic. Xander starting with Crobat is definitely not ideal, but it's as long as Xander gets a decent enough hand on turn 1, then it's on Henry to bench double Lugias to be able to guarantee that he'll get at least one Arceus. Yeah? And as we saw from the previous game, having one Arceus is fine, right? Having those two energies every single turn is really good, but having double Arceus just feels incredible.
Absolutely. And we're going to see at least that one for now, and that is so slow. There's no Lugia.
Ooh, no Lugia means Xander loses the advantage of the coin flip of that decision, choosing to go first. Henry immediately plays down the Collapse Stadium and will Marnie.
Well, I don't know if that's much better, but I do like Lugia, so I'm gonna go with advantage Henry currently.
Yeah, and then I mean the deck does play so many energies that you're feeling very confident that you'll be able to use Read the Wind. You'll be able to probably get an Arceus down, and the pressure is no longer on you to have to Lugia's bench because your opponent threatens Crobat's attack, which does 70 and poisons you, and that's it, right? So you're completely fine if they do that.
Yeah, I think Xander is also showing a little bit of that frustration. The hand just falls down immediately as he sees that Henry does continue the turn after that Marnie, and you have to feel pretty comfortable when you have multiple Lugia up against a Crobat.
Yeah, the fact that Henry didn't use Read the Wind and he has a one-card hand means like you can place your bets on what that card is. At the very least, a supporter, right? So
right.
Xander not sitting very pretty right now.
Yeah, it looks like 3 energies and the Yveltal and maybe it's Serena or something. It's at least a supporter, a Marnie perhaps. But decisions have to be made here, and they're not fun to make. It looks like Marnie is going to have to do her party trick once more and save the day. Xander needs some help.
Yeah, I think Xander was really debating on benching that Yveltal because he does risk just immediately losing. However, if he doesn't get a Lugia here, and maybe even if he does, you're 2 prizes down, you don't have the double Arceus in the discard pile, so you're far behind on your setup, you're far behind on what you have right now, and it's not looking pretty.
Yeah, it looks like multiple Ultra Ball here and multiple Aurora Energy. Lost Vacuum being the 5th card. And Xander will at least be able to find some help here, likely in that Lugia. But when you see that Crobat on the bench, that means that you're not going to be able to use that Ultra Ball to potentially draw 6 cards on the following turn. Instead, maybe you're left to that Lumineon, and then you're starting to play a lot of V Pokemon that don't hurt Lugias.
Exactly, and now Xander did also play Marnie to Henry's 1-card hand. I mean, he didn't have another option, but that does mean Henry now has extra resources, and it makes the likelihood of that single Lugia going down next turn a little bit higher than if they have a single card in their hand.
Yep, maybe not as worried with Henry with the 1 card, but now Henry has 5 to work with here. And is up against just the single prize Pokemon in that Yveltal. Going to try to get things rolling here with the Capture Energy.
Yeah, we do see a lot of energies in Henry's hand, so he'll have to decide whether he Crobats, he Luminions, and looking for that Lugia, the best case scenario for Henry would of course be to knock out Xander's Lugia. That would basically seal the game. However, it's not always easy and not without an energy field hand.
Right. Yeah, it looks like the Professor's Research is the card potentially being targeted here. Have to be a little wary of the bench space situation with that collapsed stadium down. If you're trying to get multiple Archeops into play, just one additional space to work with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh. Doesn't need it.
Doesn't grab the minion. Doesn't grab... Oh, he has another Quick Bolt just waiting. Okay, that makes sense.
Must be nice.
Right. Ooh, gets rid of the boss's order. So Xander there probably with a sigh of relief. His Lugia will very likely be staying alive. If Henry had just found a Lugia V-Star or an Ultra Ball or an Evolution Incense, then that Lugia would have been gone.
Yep, and that is at least the piece to keep you in the match here. Henry, of course, looking to have a little more than that with these 7 cards now. But finding energies and Lugias.
Yeah, no V-Star though, so Xander will be able to recover that advantage that he lost from not benching a Lugia on turn 1. This is really crazy. Both players whiffing so much that they're losing their advantages.
Yeah, just going to read the wind, and the Archeops is going to go into the discard pile. I guess that's the best for you, but that's not how you drew it up. And we see both these players now with the deck choices, their deck list choices, making a huge impact. The 4th Lugia into the hand for Henry, absolutely useless right now, and Xander hasn't been able to get anything going. He only had the 1 Lugia, and it took a couple turns to find.
Yeah, and it's really back and forth. Like, Henry had a chance at a best case scenario of knocking out Xander's single Lugia, and it ended up with the worst case scenario of using Read the Wind, and that's it.
Yeah, that's not where you want to be, and you can almost feel the tension for both of these players now as they know how close they are to starting to come out on top in this matchup. It really just takes a couple cards off the top of the deck. Professor's Research going to try to do that for Xander, and it looks like plenty of ways to search out evolution Pokemon.
Yeah, so with that collapsed stadium, now Xander will be the one playing with a single Archeop. So we're seeing sort of like the opposite of what happened last game. Xander is now going first. He will have that Archeops. He will have the initiative. But with the Yveltal in the active spot, he won't be able to power it up. So what's the follow-up here? Yeah, if you're not taking a price card, then I don't know. Xander must be having a roller coaster of emotions going from, yes, I'm going first, then no, I whiffed the Lugia, then yes, he whiffed the attack, but like...
Right, I almost wanted you to knock out the Yveltal at that point. I needed to get going with my Lugia. I needed the bench space. What are you doing? You're the world champion. Just start winning.
Right, and with the information now that Henry probably doesn't play Raikou, then there was no way for Henry to get like a 3-price turn, right? So just losing that single price card would have allowed Xander to still have an advantage. And we're actually seeing no Archeops coming into play now.
Yeah, the bench of the Lugia V, just a nod to the fact that Xander's in a very vulnerable position right now. If this Lugia V-Star were to be knocked out, the game would all but end. 1 Archeops is not going to be enough right now, and Xander's just waiting for this active Pokemon to be knocked out and maybe find a counter stadium, get 2 Archeops rolling, and start pushing some aggression.
Yeah, he really needs to find a way to get rid of that collapsed stadium, though, because otherwise then there's no way for that double Archeops, and his best attack is a little bit of damage with Lugia, but it will never be enough to 1KO, because even if he attaches a powerful energy from hand and a double turbo and another powerful, that's 240 damage, sorry.
Yeah, I believe we saw a Lost Vacuum go down for Xander early on one of those Ultra Balls, and there's only 1 other Lost Vacuum left, and yeah, you could play Pumpkaboo, but that adds a Pokemon to your bench, so that's exactly what you don't want to do. So it's really going to be down to the top of the deck finding that Lost Vacuum and maybe giving Xander an opportunity, but certainly not to be forgotten. Henry is starting to go off this turn. We have seen the Lugia come down and the multiple Archeops onto the board now, and Lugia is ready to start attacking.
Yeah, it's very interesting that both decks are built essentially to get a turn to Lugia, and neither player has been able to do that very comfortably, right, in any of the games, really. So we'll have to see what happens here now that Henry has initiative, but it's only one prize card. But then Xander, unless he... Never mind. There's the boss's order.
Yep, that is the perfect card to have in combination with all this. Xander foreseeing this with the benched Lugia, but it doesn't matter how well you see. Those extra prize cards could be the nail in the coffin. We'll have to see what Xander has left to combat this incredible Lugia V-Star.
Yeah, Xander really needs to find that lost vacuum this turn. Otherwise, he's going to start falling more and more behind, and he won't be able to take advantage of the Dunsparce being priced, which, as I mentioned, he doesn't know, right? But at the very least, it's not in play.
Yep. It's a great point. That is one way to maybe get a big attack off into this Lugia without having to expend too many resources. You don't need as many energies as the Lugia would, perhaps. And we are going to see that Archeox come down, but the Clap Stadium just really doing a lot of work right here, as both players are limited to 4 Pokemon on the bench.
Yeah, Xander not having that double Arceus means it's going to be basically impossible to use Yveltal. It's going to be really difficult to pull off any sort of comeback here. Now he has to rely on Henry whiffing KOs, whiffing attacks, and it's pretty funny to see Henry holding a lost vacuum in his hand, right?
But oh, do you want this? Yeah, they were. There was a Black Friday sale, and I got them all.
Yeah, even the V-Guard energy, I don't think will be enough here. I mean, if you're trading 2-hit KOs, like if Henry fails to find the choice belt, Xander is also failing to get a knockout here. So even though they trade 2-hit KOs, Henry still has that prize initiative. He's already 2 prizes ahead. So then Xander's Lugia goes down, and it's on Henry to close out this game.
Well, this isn't going to stop Xander from at least trying, going to promote the Lugia V-Star. It does have that guard and the powerful, but decisions are certainly here to be made. I believe we see the boss's orders here now. Yeah. Or was that just the... Yeah, okay, so we're going to see a knockout, and that is the one piece that was missing from the puzzle to keep in this prize trade, going to knock out the Lugia V on the bench.
Yeah, if Xander is able to prevent Henry from knocking out the active Lugia, then he'll be able to get back that advantage by taking these 2 prize cards. He could even use Arceus again, fully load up with Powerfuls, and knock out his opponent's Lugia. So we'll have to see, but given Henry's huge hand, and we haven't seen the Yveltal yet, I think that's what we can expect to see. Or the Charizard.
Yeah, there's plenty that Henry could find here. You'd have to think that just having a 1-prize Pokemon in the active spot to end this turn would be devastating for Xander. Xander's really looking to cash in on a Pokemon like that Raikou. If it were able to attack into the Lugia V-Star, have that choice belt, then certainly we could see the comeback slowly start to go into Xander's favor. But Henry's got a couple more resources to work with here.
Yeah, we see the Yveltal come down. There's the double Arceus to power up. Henry very smartly attached that capture energy preemptively to the Arceus, knowing he'd have to promote something next turn to retreat. And we are seeing exactly that. And unfortunately, Xander doesn't have a way to retreat in his deck list that I can tell. So that means attaching 3 energies to Raikou with a single Arceus is not possible.
Yeah, that is certainly tricky. We do see something that wasn't mentioned. The Lugia V-Star using Tempest Dive also was able to remove that stadium from play. So a little helpful there potentially for Xander as he has been struggling to make the most use of his bench throughout this game.
Interesting to see Henry choosing not to use Arceus' ability before using that research, because if Henry does end up drawing an awkward combination of Aurora energies or the double turbos, and then he's not able to power up that Yveltal from hand, then that could be a little problematic. However, I think he didn't draw any of them. So unless he doesn't have access to the attack, I'm not sure what the plan was there.
Yeah, that can definitely lead to an awkward situation. You just roll into all those energies, and the sequencing can certainly be punishing here. But looks like that is not going to be the case. Henry the beneficiary of the removal of that stadium now. It looks like Radiant Charizard is going to find its way onto the bench, and that is once again a scary Pokemon to be staring down.
All right, so Henry choosing not to commit those energies and chooses to only damage the Lugia. So very interesting. Maybe he didn't have access to a double turbo to be able to power up the Yveltal. I'm not exactly sure, but Xander gets that sigh of relief. Now the initiative, as I mentioned, is on him. His Lugia did survive, and with 2 more powerfuls, he could get the KO on this Lugia V-Star and retake the initiative.
Yeah, you can just see the power of that V-Guard energy just making this Lugia stick around for 1 additional turn, and that really could be what Xander needed here. There is an opportunity to start to find some prize cards and take a lead with just 5 minutes left remaining in round number 4 here. Both these players tied 1-1.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I can imagine the game going into turns, but I do think we will find a winner. I don't see this game being tied because there's a couple more turns in both players in terms of resources, in terms of prizes taken. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Now the initiative is on Xander. He must be trying to figure out, well, what resources do I have? What energies do I have left? How am I taking these last 2 prize cards? And that Luminion must be looking very tasty for Xander.
Yeah, this is definitely mental gymnastics right now, trying to find the keys to closing out here. Looks like the powerful energies are going to be the choice here for Xander to get this Lugia into a very dominant spot. We see, yeah, with the 3 and the 1 reduction from the double turbo, looks like just 1 more energy would be able to help out here, and the powerful is in the hand. Very nice. Yeah, a huge commitment, but exactly what you need to do here, and going to draw the hand up even further.
I believe that powerful was off the prize cards for Xander, so that's really, really good. Otherwise, I mean, he just got a choice belt, but now he doesn't need it. Now he has that choice belt on the Charizard in case he ever needed it against another Lugia V-Star, but there's no access to that for Henry. So now it might come down to Xander finding another Serena or another boss to close out this match.
Yeah, what a big flip here as Xander is able to make use of this huge turn brought to him by the V-Guard energy. Just keeping in the game 1 extra turn, taking these 2 prize cards, and even with the 1 Archeops, finding a way here, Pablo.
Yeah, it seems like it, and it's very interesting. We've seen both Henry and Xander work their way with a single Archeops. So, as I mentioned, yeah, 1 Archeops is fantastic. 2 Archeops just feels completely broken. So, 1 Archeops has been good enough, good management of resources, and the fact that Henry whiffed that choice belt to be able to attack.
This is incredible. Henry has the hiding dark energy on the Yveltal, going to have access to retreat here. The Luminion V looking to close out with the damage here on the Aqua return, and that would remove the only V Pokemon from play here, with Xander having only 2 prize cards. It doesn't get much better than that.
It really doesn't. And with no Raikou being in play for Xander and maybe not even enough energies to power it up, I don't think there's a way for Xander to get to prize cards here. So, wow, what a close to the series.
Yeah, this is getting down to the wire. We do see that Dunsparce still hanging out. Don't know if it's as impactful now with the Lugias cleared out, but worth noting, I suppose. And Xander is going to try to find these last 2 prizes. How do you think he finds them?
I generally think he can't find them this turn. I don't think, especially with that Charizard promotion, getting a Raikou in the active and powered up is basically impossible now.
Right.
So there's only a chance for a single prize card. And with Henry not playing Raikou, then Henry needs a boss or needs a Serena. That has to be in Xander's mind. Like, the game will probably come down to that.
Do you think that this comes down to having maybe a Marnie or some way to disrupt the hand here?
Yeah, I think so. If Xander hasn't exhausted all his Marnies, then, like, you don't know what's in your opponent's hand, but however many cards Henry has, it's definitely more than 4, right? So you know that with 4, there's a less chance that they'll have the card that they need to beat you, as opposed to 7 or 8 or however many Henry has. So if you can, you are basically forced to, unless you have previous information that Henry doesn't have the card. But how could you possibly know that?
Well, Xander is going to try to put the rest of this puzzle together. getting the energies onto the Radiant Charizard. Going to have a knockout here and get down to 1 prize. The problem is there's a lot of V Pokemon on the bench, and Henry has a lot of reach. Double Archeops that Radiant Charizard, and just one way to bring one of these Pokemon would be devastating, but sure enough, there's the Marnie.
There's the Marnie, so it'll be interesting to see if Henry can pull off the boss or the Serena. I think I saw it in their hand. And I think it's an easy tell when players like are drawing slowly and then they draw quickly.
Yeah.
And we see Henry rushing, making sure that time is not an issue or anything, powering up the Charizard and playing Serena to close out the game. What a back and forth we just had.
Absolutely incredible. 20 seconds on the clock. And Henry is going to close things out here against Xander Perot in this incredible mirror match here with the Lugia V-Star deck, which has a lot of hype coming into this tournament, and it is showing why with 25% of the field on this deck, and it is in the hands of some very capable players.
It is indeed, and I think the most interesting thing was seeing how both players had slow starts. Both players chose to deliberately delay their Archeops in play because of the collapsed stadium and because they're analyzing, well, how many resources do I need to really close out this game? But it ended up being the double Archeops taking the win.
Yeah, and that's generally what we expect to see. But honestly, Xander had us thinking the other way a little bit in that game. Was able to find an incredible opportunity to cash in and take a big knockout on that Lugia V-Star. But Henry really just showing that he understands everything about his deck, being able to use that Lumineon, sneak that in a perfect opportunity. No V Pokemon around, and the math just works out so perfectly from there.
Yeah, I think the MVP for Xander was going to be that V-Guard energy. That's what really gave him a chance. And then Lumineon, that Lumineon play, I think, is something that is easily something that you might miss under the pressure and under trying to figure everything out. But Lumineon is such a good card. I think it's definitely been undervalued in terms of since when it came out until now, it's being utilized way more right now. But I also think it's because now we have so many more options to power it up with Mirage Gate or Archeops' ability that we see its real value.
Yeah, you think about it just with Mirage Gate even. It's you're getting these energies back into your deck, and you have to use an item to go and bring them back out, and you only get 2 of them. With Archeops, it's incredible. You just go, oh, okay, I'll just bring these all right back. This is perfect. Oh, and the Lumineon lets me get a supporter. I'm going to go pick out any one of your Pokemon to knock out by way of this boss's orders, or maybe these V Pokemon with the Serena. So you can just see the avenues that this Pokemon brings, and this was an attack that we were not thinking about a few months ago.
Yeah, exactly. And definitely with 4 Quick Ball and 4 Ultra Ball in the Lugia deck, that makes the loop of Lumineon even easier, because even in Mirage Gate decks, you have a limited number of Mirage Gates, right? It's only 4.
Right.
But you have an unlimited amount of times you can use Archeops as long as the game is going on. So technically, you could do that loop infinitely. Probably not going to do it more than once in a game, but it is possible. And I really think Lumineon will start seeing even more play going forward.
Yeah, it was very impressive to see. Really, just this is one of those decks that it's exciting to see in the hands of a good player, just because you have to read every single Pokemon. You have to know every single attack that's available. It isn't going to be just Lugia, 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 I win. And we're going to see so many different Pokemon being used in these situations, and sometimes the right call is to pass the turn. Just play down a Lugia and try to stick around for another day. And we saw Xander doing that, and it feels horrible in the moment, but it was absolutely correct.
Yeah, I can imagine both players were like, their feelings must have been up and down for both of them, because it felt like they both had an advantage, and then they lost it, and then they gained it back, and then they lost it, and then they saw hope to win, and then they lost it. It just would, like...
Yeah, that's a great soap opera that we were able to bring you here in round number 4 of the debacle of Pero and Brand as they try to figure out who is the supreme Lugia player. I'm sure that if we played that game out 10 more times, we'd see some incredible matches. I don't know which way it would go, honestly. Both players really just showing that the way that you build this deck you're going to have an opportunity, especially if you're going first.
Yeah, and I think like something that was very nice to see was the fluidity of both players. It shows how much they've played with their deck and how good both of them are.